good afternoon to all of you. It's always the toughest session to speak just before lunch, when half the audience moves on, unable to bear the pangs of hunger, and the rest half awaits their opportunity to go out and satiate themselves. And in between these two, I will try and give you some of my thoughts on the future of management education in India. We all very enthusiastically talk about a Viksit Bharat 2047. What is a Viksit Bharat 2047? In economic terms, it refers to creation of an economy that is of a size of $30 trillion, which makes India a high-income country and which makes every Indian have an average per capita income of about $18,000. This means that in the next 25 years, India would be growing 7.5x, which means that India in 2047, 75% of that India has still not been built. 75% of that India is going to be built by you and me. And that is what makes the next 25 years a very precious opportunity, which comes once in many generations and allows us to create an India that we all would want to live in, and to create an India that all of us would be proud of. And in order to achieve this vision, I think human capital is going to be of very significant importance. Human capital refers to the human power that the country has in order to create this vision, in order to sustain this vision, in order to power this vision. And with a youth population below the age of 25 of the size of Europe, which is about 70 crore individuals, the education system is going to play a very vital role in creating a human capital that will power a Viksit Bharat 2047. I think in this regard, management education, which by and large is very significant because it catalyzes all the factor payments, land, labor, capital, and enterprise in a very big way, is going to play a transformative role. In my keynote today, I'm going to share 5 thoughts or ideas that have been constant undercurrents in my research and writings as a management scholar. I do not speak as a policy specialist here. I speak as someone who has been associated with the field of business management in a variety of ways, whether as a student, as a scholar, as a faculty, as a thought leader, as a national best-selling author, and several other ways, and would try to share my thoughts with you as to what I think would be vital for the next 25 years in the field of management education. These are also ideas that I have shared in my books, Soulful Corporations, Win-Win Corporations, and the one on the Tata Group, published by Penguin in 2019. The very first requirement for the future of management education is to embed purpose orientation in corporations and in its leaders. Often, capitalism is put behind some kind of a courtroom where we are asked whether capitalism is good or bad, whether profit-making is bad or not, or whether profit-making is good and is required. I would draw your attention to a conversation I had with Professor Edward Freeman, acknowledged, respected as the father of stakeholder theory, and university professor at the University of Virginia, whom I had an opportunity to meet as my PhD was in the area of corporate stakeholders management. In my conversation, he shared something very interesting, which I would like to quote here. He said, "To say that profits are the purpose of business is like saying that creating red blood cells is the purpose of the human body, or that breathing is the purpose of human life. It is foolish. The purpose of business is to figure out how we can create value in a complex ecosystem for each and every stakeholder that is part of that system. Profits are an outcome of that approach, and they would come in abundance. In order to make this the mainstream of corporations, the mainstream of the way leaders take decisions, it is important that we recalibrate as individuals and institutions, as companies, and as a country, the way we look at decision making. From a risk versus reward paradigm to a risk versus reward versus responsibility paradigm, because that is going to be the requirement of the 21st century. And for this, leaders will have to focus on the 4 I's: introspect, implement, innovate, and impact. It is these 4 I's that will have to have a cyclical approach in order to consistently rise higher and higher, because as was discussed in the previous panel, we cannot afford to remain in a status quo situation when the world in which we are operating is moving with such fundamental dynamism. But that which stays constant in a fundamentally dynamic world is our purpose orientation. And hence what corporations and leaders need in the 21st century is creating profits with a purpose and making money for a mission. In ancient India, the 4 Purusharthas of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha direct us in this thought process, that we must earn artha or money with dharma or the right value systems, and we must have kama or desire for moksha, which is a higher purpose. And that is what will help corporations and its leaders in the 21st century. The second idea is that we need to evolve from a zero-sum to an inclusive decision-making paradigm. For long decades, the economics approach of zero-sum decision-making has been guiding corporate boardrooms. We can either focus on employee welfare or we can focus on company profitability. We can either achieve cost reduction or achieve customer delight. We cannot achieve both. This either-or paradigm needs to be replaced by an inclusive mindset where or is replaced by and, where we can or we should be able to achieve both. And for that, the solution is innovation, because innovation is the real engine of capitalism. If we want to achieve this and in all our decisions, we will have to bring in innovation at the core of the way we run our corporations. As a country, India has led by example. It will be probably one of the first countries to become a developed economy with the green paradigm, because we are committed to achieve economic prosperity along with ensuring our environmental responsibility and growing the green way. It was this paradigm that probably was responsible for India to be the largest contributor to the global GDP for 1,750 years. A study published by Angus Maddison and authored by Angus Maddison and published by OECD in the year 2000 provides a lot of details. I would encourage you students to look it up, where you would know how from 0 AD to 1750 AD, the country which contributed the maximum to the world GDP was India. And in those centuries, our approach to societal, corporate, and economic well-being was Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We always believed that we can succeed economically, commercially, while also discharging our responsibilities to the environment, to the society, to the world at large. And in all of these centuries, we have been thought leaders, whether it is philosophy or management, whether it is sciences or mathematics, whether it is astronomy or statecraft. Every area of poetry, language, literature, India has contributed over the last 2 millennia. So this and paradigm is what had defined India in those decades and centuries and will define us in the years ahead. Third, we need to usher in the age of human centricity. I think in the last 50 years and more, or I would say almost the last 80 years now, Corporations have been inspired by the World War II mindset. What is the World War II mindset? That business is a battle. It is a war that needs to be won. And how do you win a war? By destroying your opponent, by exploiting all available resources, by focusing on the here and now. But life, like business, is not a battle. Business schools need not be busy grooming corporate warriors. In the 21st century, management education needs to bring in this human centricity into their students so that when they become leaders, they are able to look at their peers, their colleagues, those who report to them and those whom they report to as human beings with heads, hearts, and hands. They are not rabbits who can be managed with a carrot and stick approach. They are human beings with personal, social, and spiritual value systems, and they cannot be expected to leave that outside the corporate office and behave as machines in binary ways. I think it is this human centricity which is going to play a vital role in our endeavors to become a Viksit Bharat, and management education institutions need to give this in their classrooms, whether it is through the lens of, not only through the lens of HR, but in every single subject that they teach, because ultimately, whether it is HR, marketing, supply chain, finance, strategy, or leadership, it is human beings who are at the core of every decision we take on the other side. Fourth, we need to transition as management education institutions from creating job seekers to creating job creators. Over the last 8 years or more now, India has risen to become the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, with 160,000 startups and over 100 unicorns. In an article that I had co-authored with the mission director, former mission director of the Atal Innovation Mission, we had presented there that if 5% of students graduating from Indian universities opt for startups as a profession, currently the number is less than 2% in some of the best institutions in the country. If it increases to 5%, like it is in about 4 to 5% in UK, it is about 16% in US. But if in India it increases to 5%, and if 90% of those startups fail, the remaining startups that succeed will be able to create 55 lakh direct and indirect jobs. That's the potential of startups. And hence, management education needs to bring entrepreneurship as a core aspect of the way the students are groomed in their portals. Not just as an elective, not just as a subject, but as a way to contribute to the economy. In cutting edge areas, whether it is green transition or managing the energy quadrilemma, whether it is handling our NCD-driven healthcare situation, or the senior care solutions that we will need in 2047 when nearly 20% of India will be senior citizens, or whether it is regarding making our frontier technologies human-centric and impact-driven. Moreover, can we redefine the way we look at management research? Like we moved from thesis writing to publication as a means to measure success with PhD research, can we move to creation of products, processes, services, platforms as outcomes of PhD projects like some countries have endeavored to move in that direction? These would be the kind of innovations that would be required in research in the management education field. Lastly, there is a need to redefine the relationship between academia, business, and society. If corporations work towards inclusive and sustainable commercial success, they can become a force for good for nation building. For this, there is a need for corporations to transition from the antagonistic paradigm of business versus society to a synergistic paradigm of business and society to an evolved paradigm of business for society. To achieve the vision of Viksit Bharat, this change in mindset, both for corporations and their leaders, is going to be vital, and management education institutions and their leadership can and should play a very, very important role in this regard. I'll conclude with the role of the education system. For this, I will go back 200 years, a conversation between Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson, both eminent philosophers, both alumni of the Harvard University, were having discussion among themselves that their university has covered almost every branch of knowledge that exists sometime in the 1800s. Emerson to this responded to Thoreau and said, branches are fine. What about the roots? I think it is the roots of society, through nurturing the roots of human beings who are going to be going into that society and contributing, is going to be the vital role of higher education institutions, especially management education institutions, because it is the management education institutions that are going to give the power of managing money into the hands of their graduates. And hence, they need to have the kind of value systems that help them become a tree that is strong, that is resilient, that is able to give shade and also give fruits, and manage a storm without being pulled out, so that it can continue to do its role at a later date. For this, management education institutions need to groom alumni both with ability and with nobility. That is going to be the requirement in the 21st century. I'll conclude with one insight. In the age of AI, we always discuss what is it that education institutions should focus on. I agree with the director of Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta, when he said that every 5 years a new trend enters the corporate world, it enters the society, the economy, and we think it is going to be here to stay. And we definitely need to equip ourselves with those skills. And hence, development of our IQ or intelligence quotient is very vital. But along with the IQ, we will also need the EQ or the emotional quotient, because we are going towards a society where the virtues of empathy, of collaboration, of team building, of resilience are going to be playing a very vital role in distinguishing a manager from a leader. And along with EQ, we will have to cultivate SQ, which is the spiritual and the service quotient, because the one who serves well leads well. It is said that the one who cannot be a good kinkara, means a servant, cannot be Shankara or the master. That is the philosophy of India. And hence, for leaders to be able to truly impact the 21st century, they will need to build SQ in ample measure. And for all my young students in the audience, I would like to say, as you rise up in the corporate ladder, you can hire EQ, but you cannot outsource. You can hire IQ, but you cannot outsource EQ and SQ. It will have to be very much a part of your personality. And hence, integration of IQ, EQ, and SQ in our education system, in the curriculum, in the pedagogy, and in the way we groom the students in our management classrooms is going to play a very vital role. I think the National Education Policy has provided a very powerful roadmap towards some of the broad ideas that I shared. And I'm sure that with the kind of insight that was being provided in the previous session, our management education institutions are equally equipped to achieve the vision of a Viksit Bharat, to achieve the targets of the National Education Policy, and to contribute towards creating the India that we would all love to live in, to India of an India that would be the envy of the world, and of an India that will find once again its rightful place in the Comity of Nations. Thank you. All the best.